And now for our feature presentation.
Are you ready?
Streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay.
Hey, what a stupid question.
Oh, I've already had 2 glasses too of Tennessee whiskey.
Jay, you've done so good, and you have to muck it up right at the end. Jay's gray. He's all gray now. Look at his beard.
I got grayer, right? Everyone in the chat, thanks for stopping by and enjoying yourselves. We know you did. Three legends here with us.
This evening, author Christine Boyer stops by to talk about her new novel, Black Mariah.
Welcome to the show.
Hold on, one last sentence to go, Brad.
Oh, yeah, get it done.
And we're done. Finished.
Oh, yeah?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Paper Cuts. Happy Friday. If you happen to be in one of the states that changed time last Saturday or Sunday, whatever day, it's been dark since noon. So welcome all. That's Brad over there. I'm Jay. Thanks for joining us. This evening, we're going to speak with Christine Boyer. And I hope I'm saying your last name right, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. She's too nice to say no, Jay. You're screwing it up.
You don't know how to say the name of the book, so.
Which, by the way, I had to redo the intro because dummy me did it before checking out your website, where it has the pronunciation of it. I was calling it Black Maria, but
how can you know? Unless you're
right.
on the website,
well,
right?
So the issue. By the way, Christine Boyer's here. We're going to talk about Black Mariah. Totally got off track there, but then Brad makes was it a TikTok or a YouTube short or something earlier?
Yeah, although they're all the same.
Yeah. And I heard him say Mariah, and I'm like, dude, you're screwing up. It's Maria. And he was like, no. Then he shows me your website. I'm like, son of a. So I'm like, here,
See,
I'm working from home today.
That tells you who does research for the show, Jay.
No, it was a disclaimer. It was like a disclaimer, okay? But Christine, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you wanting to stop by. What are you normally doing on a Friday night besides, it's dark now.
It gets dark here at like 4 o'clock, right?
Yeah. Okay. I said noon earlier, but still.
Yeah. So, I could lie and say that I've got a robust social life and then I'm out, at the bars and clubs. But no, I'm usually recovering from the work week. I usually put on my pajamas at 4 now. And I'm usually, on the couch watching terrible television or a terrible movie. So
the best thing about this time of the year when time changes and it's dark early, like you get home from work, like the nighttime clothes comes on right away, right? Like I get in, I call up my house pants.
Take off the shoes. I
barely make it
feel less
upstairs.
guilty when it's dark at 4, right? Because when it's getting dark at 8 and I'm putting on my pajamas at like 5, then it just feels like, lazy or
you put them on at 4 or 5, then you were like, crap, I have to go back out and do something. And so you got these house pants on, slippers, and so
ratty t-shirt.
I just wear my house pants all day because I work from home.
I was gonna say, yeah. And kids, that's what's called daylight savings time. See, we're educational too. So
I was told when I was in elementary school, though, that it was going to go away by the time I was an adult.
And
I also was told we'd be on the metric system too, and I feel like I've been lied to.
I think every year they say that there's a chance it's going to go away. Every year, and it doesn't. So I'm fine with it. Actually, my wife says she hates it, but I. Like we were saying, I get my PJs on quicker.
It's tough on the pets. I think for people who have pets and don't have the capacity to understand, the rules that were made out back when we were farmer-based society. It's hard to feed them their dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, especially when they have a routine. Like my beast has a routine, and he knows when he gets his nighttime pill and everything, when he gets to lay down and snuggle and all that stuff. So yeah. Well, this show just totally opposite from your book, didn't it? So
it's all good, right?
So Black Mariah is a name, and this came out October 1st, correct?
October 1st. Yes, correct.
What kind of feedback are you getting from people so far?
So far, so good.
Okay.
Knock on wood, I haven't. I've gotten good feedback from family and friends, which I would expect because they want to remain my family and
Right,
friends.
right. They don't want to
But I'm
give any
starting
like nasty looks at family reunions or anything. Yeah.
right. But I'm starting to get some reviews out there from people I have no idea who they are, so I think
Okay.
that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
So have you written short stories and stuff before the novel?
Yes, I have a fair amount of short stories that have been published in different literary magazines, some poetry. I don't know how good the
You were in
poetry is.
Jacked, right?
I was in Jack. That's actually how I met Vern. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a short story called Skeleton Filing in their inaugural crime fiction anthology.
Yeah. I couldn't find my copy, but I was going to bring that up, and I know you
Yep,
were in
there it
Jacked.
is for the
Yeah.
folks. Yeah, and they published it. It was one of the first times I got paid for my writing, which was
Mhm.
nice.
That's always
And
good.
yeah, right. And he called me, I think in January after it was published, and he said, we're looking for people who have some novels, some stories out there. And he asked if I had anything, and I said, sure. Because I had Black Mariah. I'd taken a terrible first draft at it. So I had a really solid 50 first pages, and then the rest was just pure terrible
Yeah.
writing. So I'm like, yeah, it's great.
Really?
It's polished. It's ready to go. Let me send you the first 50 pages. You let me know what you think, and I'll, polish up the rest. And they liked it. So then I sort of had to like rush and really polish up the rest. So it all worked out. Yeah.
Vern's a blast. He's pretty intense. He,
He
he
is.
he gets really into his writing and stuff. But yeah, he's a blast. We've chatted with him a couple times. He's fun.
He's
fun.
super nice though, because he
Yeah.
always, when he sends us stuff, he sends us like handwritten letters and stuff too. He's super nice.
Oh, nice.
Very personal. I love that.
I will tell you, when he called me about Jacked, he's got like that deep voice, right? And he sounds like
Mhm.
very stern. And he called, and he's like, "Is this Christine Boyer?" And I'm like, "Great, it's gonna, it's spam. It's someone soliciting for something." And I'm like, I kind of got a little aggressive. I'm like, "Yes, who's this?" He's like, "Well, this is Vern Smith with
Who's calling,
with Vern."
please?
He's like, "This is Vern Smith," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, he's intense, but he's fantastic. He's been a
Yeah.
fantastic partner in all of this, and a
I,
great,
I love the
great ally.
releases that Run Amok does over there. Gary, we've chatted with Gary before too, and yeah, they usually send us stuff. They usually have some really good, nice, deep crime noir, just like yours here.
Mhm.
I know Brad kept messaging me and saying how much he was loving this book.
I really
So,
did.
Aw.
I really like.
Yeah.
I've not to like disparage any previous guests, but this is the best book I've read for the show in a little while. It was good.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Run Amok. I think I've read everything in their stable now. I literally just finished Andrew Miller's Namaste Mark Confidential.
That's on my list. I need to pick that up and
Yeah,
get that.
I got the last 10% into today, and so yeah, everything has been really, really good. Well written, interesting stories, unique stories. So I'm happy to be part of the stable of authors they have.
Right.
So before we get too far into it, what's your spiel? What is Black Mariah about? So everybody knows.
So Black Mariah is a crime noir novel set in the early 1970s in a Rust Belt, Pennsylvania town. It opens with the tragic murder of a child who is the grandson and heir apparent of the town's ruthless founder. The story sort of follows a pair of detectives as they race against the clock to solve the murder, and their investigation takes them deep into the past of the coal mining town where it's set.
Do you think that's kind of taking a chance opening up a book with with a
No,
murder of a young child? When I read that, I was like, "Oh man,
that's a good hook."
It is, but I was like, "What am I getting myself into here?" I mean, being a
It's
parent, that's sometimes hits, So
yeah, it's a good hook. It was very risky though. I think unfortunately, children do get murdered, but it
right.
is, a lot of times people read to escape. And even when you are reading, crime noir or mystery or thrillers, people still kind of want to have that little bit of escapism. So
Mhm.
it was a pretty big gamble.
Right.
I tried to write it in a way that was appropriately horrifying, but not salacious.
Yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't anything like overly graphic or anything about it.
Right.
You didn't go to like the nitty gritty, gross details or anything.
Right. I didn't go to like the Stephen King level of gory.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't gory. I mean, it was bad what happened, but it wasn't gory or anything like that.
Yeah.
I like the beginning. That was a great hook to pull you right into the story, I think. And it's a crime novel, so you expect something terrible is going to happen at the beginning.
Right. It's not a cozy mystery, right? So
That's right.
yeah.
We were joking a little bit off air about the Rust Belt. So do you want to take us back to the very beginning, the history?
Tell us about the Rust Belt.
I'm kidding. We're not gonna
Okay, so we have to start in the colonial past of America. Yeah.
Right. Several years ago, centuries ago. So
Right.
But you're from Pennsylvania, correct?
I am from a very small town, literally kind of in the middle, north central, called Penfield, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
It's got under 1,500 people. There's like one traffic light, but it was in the middle of the coal fields there.
Okay.
So very, very close to home. A lot of what I was writing.
I was going to ask, so you living and growing up in Pennsylvania, did you draw a lot of inspiration or anything that really happened there and add it into the story?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of my ancestors, my great grandfather worked in the mines. He was what they called a powder monkey, so he handled the explosives. And where I grew up, literally a mile away, was a mountaintop that had been strip mined. And if you look at my town on a map, you can see it. It's a big black circle in the middle of all this green. And growing up, there's a lot of abandoned mines in our area. And one of the subplots that I have in Black Maria is the pollution of the groundwater and, the streams and everything. And that was very much pulled from my childhood, because the stream that went right past my house came straight out of that abandoned mine that you can see on Google Maps. And the water and everything in it was stained this bright orange color, because you had these acidic, heavy metals, iron leaching into the groundwater and just polluting everything. Yeah. And as kids, we used to play in it. So,
of course,
that's great.
Yeah.
So someday I'm going to sprout a second head, and that's probably why.
You survived so far, right?
So far, knock on wood, yeah.
Maybe like it heightened your immune system, and now you're invincible. Now we don't know.
I'm waiting for my mutant powers to emerge.
Yes, right. Right. Who
Someone's
knew
gonna make her
then,
mad. She's gonna Hulk out one day.
Yeah. Who knew
Be
back
the orange
then?
Hulk.
Oh, look, orange water. Let's play in it. Let's.
Yeah. I mean, who knew? I mean, it was a very rural area. It's not like we had. I mean, there was cities on either side of us, like 20, 30 minutes away. But for us, you get on your bike and ride somewhere and just go play in the stream. And yeah, I imagine a lot of us we're going to be like X-Men 2.0.
Right. I like that one street light, one traffic light. Like that's how Southern Ohio is. A lot of parts of it that I lived out here for a while, and you had to go several towns over to get like groceries and stuff. And you had to time your gas out properly because you had to make it to the gas station several miles away. So yeah.
Yep.
Was there a reason you set it in the 70s for this particular story? Which I love, by the way, because stories with like cell phones and stuff, usually, I don't know why, I don't like them as much as if they're set in the 80s or 90s and stuff.
Yeah. The 70s felt like a good period because I could get into the distant past, like the 30s and 40s, the past of the coal mining town, and while still having people who had been living in that era still be alive in the 70s, if that makes sense. If I pulled it too far up, then
they were the proper age.
Right.
Yeah. If you had it like now, people from the 40s, usually are not around,
Right. So. Right. And I was born in 1980, so I don't know. I've always been a little bit fascinated by the decade that came right before me, so it just felt easy to research and appropriate for the story.
Yeah.
Because you talked about World War II a few times. I was like, that was so long ago, but oh no, this is the 70s, so it was only like 30 years before.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, when I was born in 1980, the World War II hadn't been that long ago, really. I mean, my grandfather fought in it, and I feel like, I don't know, the history, it's not as far away as we feel it is sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because the detective Adam, he was in the war. Is it was him or Felix? I can't remember. It was Adam, right?
Adam was in the war. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think when we lived during a certain time, it doesn't feel that far away. Like I was born in the 70s, but like I think of the 90s, I'm like as yesterday. But then, as my daughter points out, that was the late 1900s. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, when you word it like that, that's offensive.
Right?
No,
Yes.
I was talking to a coworker about it. I feel like the 80s were a distinct period that I lived through, and so were the 90s. But like from the early aughts to the teens, I guess, it just feels like this compressed, really short time, and I often forget that they happened. Like
Right.
I often, like when I'm doing the math in my head, like 1980 to 2024, I often do it wrong because I forget that whole decade, those couple decades were there, and I don't know why it is. Like it's a weird phenomenon.
Yeah. People ask me how old I am. I have to do the math because
Right.
like what year are we in now?
Plus 20, yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
And like, wait, I have two different numbers in the beginning here. This is weird. So
Yeah.
So you have to add the extra 10 to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of one of the subplots about the polluted water and all, there are a lot of layers to this. How did you keep all of the subplots separate? You kind of have a crime family, you have this murder that happened, you have the stuff about the mines, the polluted water, and you have this detective that kind of has a pretty big arc in the story. Like it's almost like a puzzle. How did you keep everything straight did you write it straight across, or did you write certain parts and segments, or?
I wrote it straight across. My day job, I'm an accountant, so I work with Excel a lot.
Okay.
Not to give away my, super fascinating secret, but I built an Excel spreadsheet where I just kept track of everything.
Okay.
So it was chapter, word count, and then, I have 3 point of views that I sort of cycle through in the story. So it's, what's the major thing that happens here? What's the B plot that's happening in this chapter? What do I know as the writer, but what doesn't the reader know yet? So just sort of trying to keep that all straight. I built an Excel spreadsheet. So
I don't know if anybody's ever told us they've used Excel for that. Have they?
I've heard a lot of postcards and sticky notes, but I don't think Excel yet.
No, it was pretty sophisticated. There's like sum if formulas to make sure that everyone's getting the same word count or similar word count. So,
so you went deep with it then.
I did.
Did you use it also for all the characters too? So you have a lot of characters.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So all of your plots, all of your characters.
Yeah, I have one
spreadsheet somewhere with everything. So
the summary Black Mariah sheet, and each, there's tabs, the character breakdown. I have timelines. Yeah.
So that's a hefty Excel spreadsheet then.
It is. It takes a minute or two to open.
Was that the first time you used Excel for like your writing? Like do you do it with short stories too, or was it just a novel?
No, short stories are so different, right? Because it's usually just a little snippet of a moment. This was just braiding like time periods and characters and different plot lines. So I needed something beyond just a Post-it note.
Yeah. I really do think you're the first one that says you used Excel. That's pretty interesting. I don't know if you ever even thought about that. That's
I love putting the formulas in there. The formulas is cool.
Well, I had a word count. Vern wanted me to come in around 85,000 when I wrote it the first time, and it was just awful. It was like over 100. So I knew that I had to really cull a lot of the stuff that I originally had in there and overwritten. And having sort of a rolling total helped me stay on track.
So you saying it was really bad the first time is kind of shocking to me, because I thought this was really, really well written. So like, did you just like completely do everything over, or you just edited a bunch of stuff out, or what happened?
I pretty much rewrote it. The first
Okay.
50 pages were very similar. The Felix character changed a lot, but everything that came after was brand new.
So
Did the story itself, like where the story was going to go, did that change too, or
that's
were
what
you
I was
not that
gonna
far
get
ahead
at too.
anyways?
Yeah.
The ending was always going to be the same, but how I got there was very, very different. Originally,
Okay.
it was just a straight story. It was the two detectives pretty much going from suspect to suspect, and it was almost like a quest, like like when you play Legend of Zelda and they've got
Yeah.
side quests, and like it was like, I don't have what you need, but go to this person. So it was just
Yeah.
like very quest to quest. Like it was just it was very bad. Um, I don't know what to say. Like it really was terrible. But
I think we need to see that one too. We need to compare them, make notes.
they just the farmer. I don't have what you're looking for, but go talk to the former partner. And the former partner, yeah, it just.
I'm
But
sorry, the princess is in a different castle.
Exactly, right. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. But I think it's important to write that bad first draft. I think it's important to get some of for me, to get some of my own worst impulses out of my system. Get it out of my system. It's out there. I've proven I can write it now. I can write 100,000 words. They might not be good words, but they're on there, or they're on the page. So it was easier, I think, to edit from there and just start back over.
Yeah.
Gabby Hitchcock in the chat says, "Nothing you have ever written has been awful, Christine."
Thank you, Gabby.
Who is that? Somebody we know?
It's my sister-in-law.
Okay.
My sister by another mister.
And then Laura Hightower, she's an author as well. She says, "Yes, you can't edit a blank page, so you got to get the words down."
Exactly. Yeah, I think is it Annie Lamont who says, like, you just have to write the shitty first draft. Just write it.
Just go with it.
Yep. So when you were going through it the second time, or maybe the third time, however many times you did it, like what in your mind changed as far as the story of not making it be so questy, like, oh, go here to get this and then go there to get that? Just
I think
you've had the basics down and it just was easier to kind of iron it out the second time, or?
I think so. I also think the first time I wrote it, it was really all just from Felix's point of view, the entire thing.
Okay.
And I started it back in 2015, and it had been sitting in the drawer for a long, long time. And I think, I sort of grew as a writer. I finished a certificate program, and I did a master's program in writing, and I sort of embraced the multiple point of view that I did with Black Mariah, and I think that worked better.
Yeah, I like stories with multiple POVs personally.
Yeah, same.
Do we want to touch on and say what Black Mariah is, or should we just keep that? Let people who read it.
I don't think that's a spoiler to say what that is. If she wants to say,
I didn't know until I read it. Obviously,
I thought that was gonna be like the name of the killer was Black Mariah. That's like the serial killer name or something.
Yeah. So Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So Black Mariah is, it has different meanings in other places. I've been told that it also can mean like a paddy wagon or a police wagon that, gathers up rowdy folks, drunks on the street or something. But where I grew up, back in the day, during the coal mining era, Black Mariah was either the horse-drawn wagon or later on, the automobile that would go to collect the injured and dead miners who were hurt or killed in the mines. And if there was a big mine collapse or a big mine tragedy, they would often run a siren. So people, the wives and children and everyone in the town would know, okay, something terrible has happened. And, my husband, my brother, my son might not make it back. But oftentimes in the mines, it would just be like one death, two death here and there, and they wouldn't run a siren for that.
Right.
But they would call for the Black Mariah. So a lot of times, people would be in their homes and they would just see the Black Mariah going towards the mine, and they knew something had happened. And then it would just be kind of like this sick waiting game to see if it would come back and stop in front of your house. Yeah. And if it did, were they bringing your dead, loved one, or were they bringing your loved one still alive, but bringing them home to die? Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine having that job, driving that thing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that'd be terrible.
You're not the life of any parties. You're always bringing bad news, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of became like the I guess the token of just bad luck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a bad omen. Yeah.
Exactly.
One or
yeah.
two, but one or two bodies that wasn't worth the effort of running the sirens. You know, you
Right.
gotta
It's not an emergency to bring one dead person back, Jay. You gotta bring
it's
multiple.
just 2 bodies a day. It's a light day. Okay.
Yeah.
We kid, but this really happened.
Yeah, a
Laurel
lot of
says
times
that.
it was just onesies, twosies.
Yeah.
Laurel says that title is metal as fuck. But what I thought was interesting, and not even interesting, but just like also terrible and terrifying, is like they didn't take the bodies to like the hospital or the doctor. They just brought them back home and here, do whatever you're gonna do with it.
Yeah, a lot of times there just wasn't a hospital or a doctor around. Where I grew up, there was a lot of what they called patch towns. So there'd be like a little coal patch. Someone would buy the land and they would just set up like a little patch town there to mine it. And the nearest hospital might be, 20, 30 miles away, which by horseback or, by wagon or by the slower cars of the 20s and 30s, it might take you an hour to get there or more.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you didn't have the money for it. So take them home to die, make them as comfortable as you can. But the miners didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah. Bring them
Yeah,
back to
'cause I
mom,
won't-
all mingled up and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying there's a scene where they bring back a person who's still alive, but they've been mangled.
Yeah.
That's just wait for them to die, basically, is what happens.
Yeah.
It's terrible. but the title is metal. It's
Yeah. I mean, that's
really. I'm kind of a downer of a guest, I guess.
No, it's good.
Well, no, but I'm just thinking, who voluntarily signs up for that job? The pay's got to be horrible, and it's just like, oh man.
They probably didn't have pay. They just get scripts, so it's
They
not
get
really
the
pay
script,
anyway.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to get script, it's probably the safest job you can get in the mine.
Yeah, that's true. Was that always going to be the title, or did you figure that out as you're writing it, and that kind of played into the story?
No, that was always going to be the title.
Okay.
This was one of the rare occasions where the title came first, or
Was it?
Nearly first.
And I wanted to ask about the multiple POVs. So like reading it, I don't know when it happened, like around chapter 10 or so, we get a POV from who the killer is.
Mhm.
And so it turned from what I thought was gonna be like a whodunit, like we're with the detectives and we don't know who it is until they know, but we find out before they do. So was that always the plan as well, for the audience to know who the killer is before the detectives find out? Or
No, the first draft was really just following Felix from start to finish.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like I said, like that game of Clue where you were just eliminating people as he went along. And after it sat in the drawer for as many years as it did, and after I kind of lied to Vern and said it was, a completely finished draft.
yeah, we're done. You got to crank it out real quick.
He's listening now. He knows.
It
that,
probably is.
yeah.
He's gonna listen like,
Yeah,
oh,
sorry,
I see
Vern.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yep, it's good. It's good. Just give me a month to polish it. And I was like working through midnight. No, I thought as when I took it out and I decided to delete most of it, I thought the real story of a whodunit was a stronger story than a whodunit in this case, because I really wanted to get into some of the psychology of the killer. So it made, I understand it's probably a little bit risky because I know a lot of crime and mystery readers like to solve it along with the detective,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
but I felt like it was a more compelling story to really delve into the killer's history and their thought process and what made them what they are.
Mhm. It also helped that the why was also interesting. It wasn't just like some lame, like out of nowhere thing. Like you
Right.
built up the story as to why the person wanted to do it.
Yeah. I got to be so careful about the
I know you can't. I
spoilers.
don't want to slip and say it.
It was very mindful, I will just say. I did it with intention, so we can leave it at that. Very vague. But
And
Was
I
it-
don't think I've ever seen the word "why done it." I
Yeah.
thought Brad messed up, and I was like,
Is
"Shouldn't it be
that
who
a
done it?"
typo?
I was like, and then he started sending me all this literature. No, it's a "why done it." I'm like, okay, Crime expert.
He's like, you typoed on the promo, Brad. You spelled who wrong.
But yeah, now I see it's popping up everywhere. I'm like, I just didn't pay attention. But that's pretty cool though, because it's kind of like both.
Because it's still a mystery.
Yeah.
But it's just the mystery is why instead of who, which I'm one of the people, I like the whodunits, but I really like the why for what was behind everything for this one.
Yeah, same. I think about is it Thomas Harris who wrote Hannibal?
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs. So I really liked Red Dragon, because I think early on we know right at the beginning who the Red Dragon is, who the killer is, and I remember reading it the first time, and I loved so much that we really got into that character's head and history and past and what shaped him, and like that. They always tell you write what you want to read, and that I loved that book intensely. So I wanted to do my version of it.
And the why in this one, it's almost like it could be a standalone story itself. Like a little short novella on the side. So it was just as intense, I think, as the rest of the story too. So
Laurie and Jennifer both in the chat said they love the why aspects of the story. Was it harder to do a whydunit versus a whodunit as far as like laying out the story and stuff, or the same?
It was almost easier because, like you said, around chapter 10, the reader now knows what I, the writer, know. So I didn't have to try to be coy. The first draft, I had to be really coy, because there's that thing, right? Like, you can't cheat your reader at the end. You can't, give a story and then just pull that switcheroo at the end, because they're going to feel cheated. They're going to feel upset about that. So once I, tell you, the reader, here's who the killer is, I don't have to be coy about hiding clues or, any of that stuff. So it actually made it easier.
Right.
Yep.
I think it brings like an aspect to it where the reader, it's like watching that scary movie. You're like, don't go in that room. So the reader's reading. I'm like, you idiot. The clue's right there.
Right.
Because we know it, but the characters don't know it in the book. I found myself saying, it's right there in front of you. What are you doing? And why does it take us so long to find this and figure this out? So,
yeah,
that's just me. But
and Jennifer says, plus, even though we know who the killer is, it was compelling to figure out the why, and you managed to still toss off some twists that I didn't see coming.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah,
which is wild to me, because as the writer, it doesn't feel twisty to me anymore, right? Because Vern said the same thing. When he read it, he's like, yeah, I didn't see the twist coming. And I'm like, which twist? Like, what are you talking about? Because it was planned in that Excel document. And, by that point I had written it and read it and written it and read it. And it was just, like second nature. So I can't really see the twists anymore, because I was just living it so much.
You didn't have the twist tab on the Excel spreadsheet.
No, it's hard to unknow what you know, right? Like,
it is, yeah.
I'm never going to have the experience of reading it with a fresh slate.
Where did you pick up that concept? What did you read before in your past that get you in this kind of crime noir and pick up that? Who are some of your inspirations, I guess I'm trying to say?
I read pretty broadly. I don't know if I necessarily read very, like, really for depth in any one genre. I think for me, the crime authors I've always really loved have been, Thomas Harris, like I said. I've always loved James Ellroy, who, wrote Black Dahlia, LA Confidential. But I've never aspired to write like him, because I feel like he has a very unique voice that I think if I tried to imitate it, it would just be a very poor imitation.
His is very abstract, I think. That's makes you fill in the blanks yourself. So yeah,
yes,
I understand that. Yeah,
and he has a very unique voice, right? Like his dialogue, like everything's so snappy. I think he's got a really great voice, but very unique. I think, just looking at, I read a lot of literary fiction. I read a lot of horror. So I kind of am like a magpie, where I just take the little bits of everything that I like.
Okay.
I think the first author I ever really intensely read and loved was Stephen King, because when I was a kid, he always had the biggest books at the bookstore or the
Yeah.
library. And when you only have $10 to spend on a trade paperback and you
Yeah.
love to read, you're going to buy the biggest one with the most pages.
Right. Bang for your buck, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always really loved just different genre writers. So I'd say Stephen King.
Yeah.
In the crime, it's Thomas Harris, it's James Elroy. Trying to looking Dennis
Well,
Lehane.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you
Yep.
said you also read horror, because there are certain aspects of this book that I thought could actually, of course, there's the horror of the kid being killed early on, but there are certain aspects of it where I thought it could, a few changes here and there, and it could turn into just a horror book. A little bit teetering the gothic feel to it at times.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
especially
Yeah.
the big house, the big mansion. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, mafia being involved, things happening with, dirty cops. Okay, I don't want to give away everything else, but there's a horror aspect in there that I started picking up on too.
I think the gothic comment is spot on. I definitely felt like I had gothic influences to it with the big old house, right? The
Yeah.
haunted house. I've always sort of felt like horror and crime, noir thrillers are just kissing cousins to each other. And you even see that
Oh,
with
yeah.
Stephen King. He wrote Mr. Mercedes, right? And I
Yep.
think there were 2 more books after it, and those are detective novels,
Mhm.
crime novels. I don't think there's any horror, but the horror genre, it can oftentimes just be the horror of being human and living a human
Yeah.
existence. It doesn't have to be all killer clowns in the sewers and
Yeah.
Yeah.
vampires. So I think
He's done a
there's an
couple
overlap
of
there.
he's done a couple of other straightforward crime,
Yep.
like Later.
Billy
is that
Summers
one?
is kind of crime. Later
Yeah.
is crime.
Colorado Kid, I think, stuff like that.
The
yeah.
Outsider's a sequel to Mr. Mercedes, but it goes
Yeah.
supernatural, but it's pretty much a detective story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and a
like
lot
even-
of, The Green Mile is just a straight story set in a
Mhm.
prison.
So there's a lot
Shawshank
of
Redemption is
crossover
a novella. Yeah.
Yeah.
for those genres. So
hmm
it's always good too when you can intertwine a couple of different genres, because you're getting a much wider audience, that you could pull in. So
I think so. Yeah.
Laurie says the mansion felt like it was a character. Yeah, you had that one part where you're describing it. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a mausoleum or a museum, is how you described it, I think.
hmm Yeah.
hey, Gabby's got
I-
a question down there.
Oh no, Gabby.
It says, do you feel like you wrote the story with the readers in mind and what you like to see in novels?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the first. Well, there's like kind of 2 sayings that always bounce around the writing world, like write what you know and write the book that you want to read. And I guess I'd never really read a book set in coal mining, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I couldn't think of anything. Dennis Lehane writes about Boston stuff, and James Elroy is set in LA, and you sort of have like these regional writers who specialize in their areas. But I'd never seen anything for someone like me who grew up in that region. So I
Mhm.
did sort of think, for the reader like me who grew up in a place like me, I wanted to write a book for that person.
Was that important for you to sort of put your own place in the story like that?
I think so, because it's not really a place you see very often. And,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in the middle of nowhere in a town of less than 1,500, whoever would, if not me.
Yeah.
So
Are
it
you on
felt
the town
important.
sign yet? Home of Christine Boyer, author
Yeah.
of Black Mariah.
I you know what? I'm not even the most famous person from Penfield, because there was a guy who wrote military marches. He has his own Wikipedia page.
Oh,
we could totally make you a Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
We can get that done for you.
I'll never have he had like marches. He wrote like those big military marches like John Philip Sousa.
Oh yeah.
And he's from my hometown. So
Gabby says you should be right next to the mini mart on the sign.
the Nittany Mart, yeah.
Yeah. Open 9 to 5. Also home of Christine Boyer, author of Black Mariah.
Yeah, the traffic light turns off at 7 and turns to a blinker, but
Yeah. That's a big town, right?
It is.
You were talking about Gothic, Jay. Like even not just the house, but like because it mostly takes place in the wintertime, so it's all overcast and
Yeah.
dreary and dark. And then the
Few
mine
seasons
stuff is,
changed through. Yeah.
and then the stuff with the mines, it's they're underground, it's dark, they're dirty, they got the coal dust on them and stuff. So even that kind of aspect of it had this sort of bleak Gothic feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don from Dawn the Steel Plant says you need to write Steel Mill Crime next.
Still milk crime.
What is the story? Is that it or?
So I have rough ideas for sequels for Felix. I do really like him now.
Okay.
I did not like him on the first draft. He was kind of I don't know if I was going through a Sherlock BBC era. He was really just kind of an arrogant prick. I didn't like him. So when I started over, I'm like, all right, let me just let this guy be who he wants to be. Rural Pennsylvania has so many like rich stories that just never get told. And I've thought about, in the early 80s, you have things like the Satanic Panic.
Oh, there you go. That'd be a good story.
Like even in the early 90s and up till today, you have in the rural areas these pockets of extreme white supremacists
Yeah.
who buy up the cheap land in the very rural area where there is no law presence. And they just sort of, do their thing. And so there's a lot there that I think is not really represented too much. And, I would love to keep following Felix around. So I do have some ideas.
I could see him changing through the decades. I think Rhonda can have some spinoffs too. Yeah. She kind of became my favorite character at one point. So
I enjoyed her. She was new to the second draft, and I was surprised
she
by
wasn't
her.
the original.
No, she was not. So I liked writing her a lot.
I feel like the things that you didn't originally like about Felix is like things Rhonda picked on him about. Like he's been too copy and stuff like that. Like he was,
yeah.
So I liked how you, after you said that, I liked how you kind of played that into like Rhonda's pointing that out to him. It's like, okay, so I need to cut that off now.
Yeah.
Laura said she'd love to see a sequel, and yes, Jennifer, she loves her. I liked Rhonda a lot.
Yeah, they could be a duo and a crime fighting duo.
A crime fighting duo taking on the extremist militia in Potter County.
Yeah.
Was
that important for you to have a female protagonist to help like the detective part of it?
I didn't put her in just to put like in a token female. I did really want him to have sort of a buddy on the force, a buddy he went to school with. There's sort of this phenomenon in the little towns where even when everyone knows everyone else and everyone knows their family, right? Because they would say, oh, Christy Boyer, she's Brenda's kid, or, and Brenda was a coyote. Like you sort of get your lineage every time you introduce someone.
Yeah.
And everyone knows each other. So I really wanted to kind of have Rhonda be his, buddy from the neighborhood that he can just sort of bounce ideas off of. And originally, I just kind of thought, okay, she'll be a side character. But it's a cliche to say, but your characters kind of take on a life of their own. And she kind of took on a life of her own. So I thought, all right, like I'll give her some latitude to do that. And it worked out really well.
Yeah, I liked how the town felt like it was alive. Like it had the church group that Felix's mom was part of, like the gossipers around town. I think you mentioned like the Kiwanis Club at one point.
Yeah.
And, like the farmers were having like a spaghetti dinner because someone had cancer to raise funds. So there was all these small little things you weren't really important to the story, but added a lot to the town itself to make it feel like, this living, breathing place. It wasn't just, a blank canvas in the background. We're only focused on the story. Yeah. Added all those little details in the background.
Yeah, those are details.
The Kiwanis Club. I know about that. I can connect with that. Yeah.
Yeah, those were details I took directly from my experience growing up where I did. Yep.
I don't know how far ahead you've thought about it, but and hopefully this doesn't give away a lot, but Jack's side family, I could see that kid taking what he's entitled to, like the the family. I want to say so much more, but I want people to experience it because they're like side family. What are you talking about? But I mean, people in the chat have read it, so they know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
And that again, that's another layer to the story. That's like, what's the background for that? I want to know more about that too. It's just like, yeah, we can make this a whole like 20-book series. We'll talk off air here. That's what
just expand it to a big Black Mariah expanded universe, right?
Yeah, we could get Netflix involved with this, and
I could totally see this as like an HBO miniseries. I was picturing like East Mayor and or Mayor of Easttown, or something like Mindhunter, that kind of gritty feel. Is what I was like imagining in my head while reading this. I was like, yeah, that's great.
I got a lot of Mayor of Easttown.
Oh yeah,
is that what it's called? I got a lot of that feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because the tragic thing happened early, and then you're trying to figure out everything about it. That's kind of like how that, definitely.
Yeah.
Did you have any influences as far as for this specific story, or was it just something you coming up with out of the blue?
I think it's just something I came up with out of the blue, but I would say that like a lot of the coal mining stuff came from stories I heard as a kid. Mm-hmm. One of the things that always happened when I was a kid, family reunions, holiday dinners, church picnics, things like that. The old timers would always just sort of circle up and talk about the bad old days. And, us kids would always just sort of sit there and listen. And they were just fascinating stories. One of the subplots I think I can safely say is, the subplot of the Breaker Boys, the small children, the little boys who would sit in the coal breaker to sort out the coal from everything else they dug up, like the flint. Yeah. And I remember one time just sitting, listening, hearing, the old timers talk about so-and-so who had died years ago. And they're like, oh yeah, he had been a breaker boy. And apparently you could always tell who had been a breaker boy in the mines because, being a small child in that type of environment really stunted your growth. And so you'd sort of have like these 20, 30-year-old men who had been breaker boys, and they were like bent and stooped and like really kind of unhealthy looking. Right. And they were talking about, someone who had been that role in the coal mines. And so I think a lot of those stories just kind of got into my psyche and stayed there.
Blistered hands and their lungs were probably lined with soot and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The story in the book is brutal about that part where someone gets pulled into it and we can't turn the machine off because we'll lose money. Wait till the end of the day.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ.
And
but I'm sure that really happened though. So I was like, that's
it really did.
Brutal.
Unfortunately, I mean,
the kid's like, hey, I'm still
yeah.
It's what happened. It's unfortunately historically correct because, in our area there were just a lot of robber barons based around the coal industry, and Andrew Carnegie was in steel, but they were brutal to their workers. They had all these cheap immigrants coming in from Eastern Europe and Italy. And, if it was going to cost me $10 to shut down the breaker, but only, $2 to hire someone new.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah. Black Mariah. This is the book we're talking about this evening. Christine Boyer's with us. And this is through Run Amok.
Run Amok Crime, Jay. Got to add crime on the end of it.
Run Amok's do they have a big umbrella?
It's Run Amok and there's Run Amok Crime.
It's not Run Amok Romance or Run Amok.
No, it's Space
Not Run Amok Space Erotica.
Like
there we go.
Yeah. So who do you run your stuff by first before you start sending it out to the world?
It sits in the drawer since 2015, Jay.
No, I know this
one did, but I mean, she tells Vern it's done, and she's got to finish it up.
I lie to Vern. I say it's done, and then
Vern, it's a masterpiece. And
I sweat stress my way through 2 a.m. rewrites.
Don says her brother, and he's yelling at it with an exclamation point.
My brother is illiterate, so no.
I really hope he's your brother in the chat.
He probably is. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. He's out of the will. Um, Honestly, I have a couple writing groups, some
Okay.
trusted, writerly friends that we meet up every so often. The one group we meet every Sunday, and we've traded pages before. But too much, I don't really, too much, I really don't have beta readers or anything.
Okay.
I'm one of those writers who, when I get a lot of feedback, then I start to try to incorporate all the feedback, and sometimes
Right.
it's good and sometimes it's bad. So I I have a couple trusted, my trusted writerly friends, but that's about it.
Yeah. So when you were studying writing in school and all, was that when you started getting into crime writing, or did you did everything as a combination, not just crime?
I did everything as a combination. I think a lot of my short stories would probably be called literary fiction, just really
Okay.
quiet, internal type stories. This is really the first piece of genre fiction that I've ever written.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yep.
What made you want to swing and go for like the straight hard boiled crime with your first novel? If you weren't doing that a lot with the short stories.
I honestly, it was really just a gateway from Jacked. I had written that
Mm-hmm.
short story, which was, I would say it's probably like a literary crime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Vern may disagree, but when he called and said, "Hey, we're looking for books," I sort of had this thing already half written.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Sure, why not?" I was doing a fiction certificate through UCLA online or UCLA Extension, and I had taken a crime fiction course.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
So I took that as a lark, and that's where Black Mariah started.
okay.
I
Thanks.
want to ask. So you've got the killer in the book, and obviously they're evil and they're the antagonist. But you've also got Thomas Farney, like the matriarch of the family, and he's almost an even bigger villain than your
Hmm.
killer. So what was like the dichotomy between those two? That you've got this person who's killing people, but you've also got this kind of overlord who's like reigned over the whole town basically for since it's been there.
It was difficult to give Thomas Farney any sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
I have sympathy for the actual killer, but Thomas Farney, I sort of modeled him on several different robber barons that I'd read about and studied.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Carnegie being one of them. In the Pittsburgh area, Henry Clay Frick was another. There was a big, they were steel robber barons, but you have these stories of like the Homestead strike where, workers were striking for better working conditions and better wages. And instead of, working with them to solve their problems and give them a more fair shake, um, Carnegie and Frick like would call in the Pinkerton detectives, and it was just a bloodbath.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I grew up in a family that was very pro-union, very pro-worker. So I sort of always had this ingrained sense of injustice for the worker.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was pretty easy to lean into the evil side of Thomas Farney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even like against his own family, like he's not nice. Like his son Jack, it
Just a
seems like
very
Yeah.
cold
Claire, his
person.
wife, he just kind of puts his wife over there and lets the nurse take care of him.
Yeah. I mean, you read some of the stories of these guys, and Vanderbilt, Rockefeller. They were ruthless guys who treated their family pretty terribly. Sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
they would discard their first wife when a younger, better-looking one came along, and they would, put a lot of pressure on their sons to achieve what they had achieved. And when they inevitably couldn't do it, they cast them out, or they just treated them terribly. They don't.
Right.
I I almost feel like when you're that sort of person, you stop seeing the people around you as people. You see them as, you know, um, I don't know, things. Something.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have value? Does it not have value? And I think a lot of it was just really based on the history of these types of people, these robber
Yeah.
barons.
One of the more really subtle scenes that sort of played into like how bad of a guy he was the little boy who gets killed at the beginning, Junior. There's a scene between him and his dad where he's playing with like Matchbox cars,
Mhm.
And the dad comes in. He's like, he freaks out because he thinks it's the grandfather. Like, please don't tell me I'm playing with toys because I'll get in
Yeah.
trouble for it because I'm supposed to be studying instead. Like even the
Yeah.
simplest thing as playing with a little Hot Wheel car, like he wasn't even allowed to do that. And he was
Right.
like 7 or something like that, 6 or 7, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was and yeah, like you said, we find out the why of why the killer is doing what they are, and you do feel kind of bad for them. And you kind of understand, they're still killing people. It's bad, but you understand where their motivations are coming from.
I'm
But
not
there's,
advocating murder.
No,
Especially
not at
the
all.
murder of a child.
But
yeah,
there's a reason there.
Yeah, there's a reason.
But we won't get into that. But no.
But there's no
Not
redeeming
advocating.
for Thomas Farney at all. Like nothing about him.
He's just a very cold person. Just
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Was that cathartic for you to sort of have Thomas get his comeuppance in a way?
Honestly, it kind of was. Like I said, I came up in a family that was very pro-union. Like I said earlier too, my family worked in the coal mines, and I
Mhm.
know how hard my great-grandfather worked in the mines, and I know how little he ended his life with. When
Mhm.
you do such a physical job, you're trading your health for really nothing at all. You're not generating any of the wealth that's coming out of it, or you're
Right.
generating the wealth, but you don't get to keep it.
Mhm.
And so that was cathartic. And also when I went to college, I had a part-time job as a waitress at a country club. So I sort of got to see really rich people up close.
The
And I was
snobs.
right. And I was like, oh, they really are this terrible sometimes. Like they
Mhm.
really do just see me as trash. So I sort of had like the history, my family and everything, but that was the first time I ever experienced it, personally,
Right.
just
Mhm.
understanding that I was nothing to these people, that they could treat me terribly, and there'd be no repercussions. And I was just a waitress. Like it was what it was. It wasn't like I was being, forced to
They
sort through
all
coal.
drank with their pinky out. Like
They don't ask for a refill. They just shake their cup at you.
I know that's what I
Yeah.
was doing. Be like, hey,
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, it's the story of like all through up and down through Appalachia. The story of where these people come in and set something up, and they just use the people,
Mhm.
and then when that resource runs up, they just leave and just they don't leave the people with anything. They don't have
Yeah,
any money.
I mean-
They don't have any family wealth. They don't have any land really. They just literally just use them up and then basically peace out and move on to something else.
Yeah, and the land that they might be able to get is now polluted, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
think that
tainted,
is
ruined. Yeah.
that's one of the prevailing stories in Appalachia is outside interests, or even interests within. They extract all the wealth and then they take it with them and leave behind, broken people, broken towns, broken ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Rockna is saying your book is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank you, Brooklyn.
I think both Brad and I agree.
I really did. I know I said
it
earlier,
is.
but this is the best book I've read for the show in a while.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that's not
thank you.
that's not to say I haven't liked the other books, but this one was really, really good.
Yeah. We
it's-
only talk about the good books on our show.
We did. And it still shocks me when you said like it was really bad the first draft. It's like I don't see how, like, your writing was great. Like the story might have changed, but I don't see how it could have been like terrible the first time. That just kind of shocks me because of how good I really thought it was.
We can go ahead and say that this version is pretty much a brand new draft. The first draft,
Yeah.
we can just say that it was just a failed novel I did.
Yeah. Christine, we can't thank you enough for wanting to spend some time with us and chatting. Definitely our recommendation to pick
Oh
up.
yeah,
Hey,
this was fantastic.
Christmas is around the corner, so I think everybody in the chat has
This
read
would fit great in a stocking, perfect
Yeah.
stocking stuffer gift for somebody.
Yeah. From Run Amok Crime, our buddies Gary and Vern and everyone else that's over there running that, and I'm so glad Vern reached out to us and sent us a copy. He sent it to us a while back, right? We've had it for
Yeah, I've had it for a while.
Yeah.
Which kind of feel bad about now because it's really good. I waited too long to read it.
Well, we were trying to figure out times and everything, so yeah. But Christine, we don't want to keep you. I know it's probably midnight wherever you are now.
It's past Jay's bedtime, is what he's trying to
It's
get
not past. It's the weekend. I got a 3-day weekend. But yeah,
It's
get
9
ready.
o'clock p.m., but it's been dark for like 10 hours. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta get ready for your night life, your clubbing that you were
So you
talking
can go
about.
clubbing.
There is so much trashy reality television just waiting for me to watch it.
Yeah.
Phenomenal book.
So
Before we leave,
thanks.
there's a Baker. I guess your godson is yelling at the screen. I can't believe there's a celebrity in the family.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Aunt Christy. See, you're famous. You need your name on the
I
sign
need my
going
name
into
on
town.
the yep.
That's
Right
the
outside
perfect
the
place
Nitty-Mart.
to end it right there. To being called the celebrity in the family right there. So
Can't
Phenomenal
get
book.
any better than that, right?
Paul
Well, thanks
just
for
ordered
having
it.
me. It's been a great chat.
yeah, Paul just ordered it. Awesome, Paul. It
Oh,
is
great,
like it's
Paul.
next Tuesday where Paul's living right now.
Paul, Paul sets an alarm to wake up at 3:00 in the morning his time to watch our shows. And Paul's awesome.
Where's Paul out of?
He's somewhere
Australia, right?
over in. No, I don't think it's Australia. It's somewhere
Paul,
in Europe,
where are
I
you?
think. Paul's like, you idiots! I'm here.
I know. He's like,
I don't think it's Australia because
I'm in
Australia's
Ohio
like a
with
whole
you, Jay.
24 hours ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it when people's families and stuff come support them, read their books, or show up to the events and stuff. I always think that's super cool.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone in the chat, especially the friends and family who've turned out. Especially Baker. It's probably past his bedtime. He's
But
a
it's the
toddler.
weekend
So.
now, so
That's cool. Hey, Christy's a celebrity. That's awesome.
yeah, that's how we're.
Well, the last time I talked to him, he
Celebrities.
was mad that I had the same last name as him. He's in that toddler age, right, where he's Baker Boyer, so no one else can be Boyer. And,
Somebody's got to teach him the method. There we go.
right.
My 4-year-old, for the longest time, he could only call him his first name. His middle name's like, that's not my name. It's Charlie. But now he's finally starting to say his middle names along with it.
He's understanding his identity. That's good.
Yeah.
It's way past his bedtime. And Paul is in Bulgaria, Jay, not Australia.
Yeah, wow.
Is he really?
Paul-
Why did I think he was in Australia?
What do you think he's lying about it, Jay? Is he really?
It could very well be. He probably just built a joke out there. He's like, I'm in Kentucky.
No, he's not.
Everyone in the chat, we appreciate you stopping by as always. Thank you so much, Christine. Hope you have a great night. Hope we get a few more people like Paul. He just ordered it. We get a few more people with their eyes on this, ears on this, so they'll
Be shipping to Bulgaria.
yeah, they'll get more sales for you because it is a good book and we'll
He
spread
goes
the word. So, Brad, I think that's it.
It is.
Thank you
Got
so
anything
much,
else for
guys.
us?
It was
Go
great.
pick it up. I hope there's a sequel. I hope we see Felix again. Rhonda's the buddy cop duo. That'd be a lot of fun. I really, like I said, I really enjoyed it. I thought your writing was great. And I was super invested the whole way through. It was an excellent story.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's a wrap. Till next time, everyone. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Love you,
Yeah.
Jay.
I know you do.